For about 2,500 years, there's been this system of thought, quietly exploring our inner universe. But not through faith, not through belief, but through a really rigorous kind of self-examination. So today, we're going to look at Buddhist philosophy as what many of its earliest texts suggest it is, a practical, hands-on science for understanding the human mind. So let's just start with a question that kind of reframes this whole thing. What if the answer to all our deepest problems, the stress, the anxiety, that feeling that something's not quite right, what if the answer isn't something you have to believe in, but a skill you could actually learn? A skill for working directly with your own mind. And that right there is the radical idea. The Buddha wasn't coming down from on high with a set of divine rules. He was basically acting like a doctor, offering a diagnosis and a treatment plan. He saw the core problem of life not as some kind of metaphysical sin, but as a psychological problem. And for that, he said, you need psychology, not theology. Okay, let's dive into that. Because, like any good scientist or physician, the very first step is to clearly define the problem. What exactly is this fundamental illness that this whole system is trying to cure? Well, the term for it is dukkha. Now, it's often translated as suffering, but honestly, that word doesn't really do it justice. It's not just about big tragedies. Dukkha is more like that subtle background hum of stress and unsatisfactoriness that comes from living in a world where everything is always changing. It's that slight disappointment when a great meal is over, or that low-grade anxiety you feel about a deadline next week. That's dukkha. And you can kind of think of dukkha in 3 layers. First, there's the obvious stuff, the pain of life's hard realities, like getting sick, getting old, losing people we love. Then layer 2 is the more subtle stress of change, that feeling that nothing good ever lasts. And the third and deepest level is the suffering that's built right into our own minds, that constant grasping for pleasant stuff and pushing away of unpleasant stuff, trying to build a solid me out of experiences that are always shifting. This leads us right to the core method, the 4 Noble Truths. And what's so cool is that they're structured exactly like a doctor's clinical diagnosis. Step 1, identify the illness. Dukkha exists. Step 2, find the root cause, this compulsive craving or thirst. Step 3, give the prognosis. And hey, good news, it's totally curable. And finally, step 4, prescribe the treatment. You see, it's a completely pragmatic framework for healing. So this brings us to a really crucial point. This whole system is intensely practical. Part of being a good scientist, or a good doctor for that matter, is knowing what not to focus on. It's about setting aside the questions that might be interesting, but don't actually help solve the problem right in front of you. The Buddha was famous for this. People would come to him and ask these huge, abstract, metaphysical questions like, is the universe infinite? Is there a soul? And he would just remain silent. He refused to get dragged into those debates because from his point of view, they were just a distraction from the real work. And here's why, in his own words. He said that speculating on these big mysteries, it just doesn't lead to the goal, which is the end of suffering. He used this famous analogy. It's like a man who's been shot with a poison arrow, and he refuses to let the doctor pull it out until he knows the name of the archer, what village he came from, and what kind of wood the arrow was made of. Look, the priority is to get the arrow out. Okay, so if the focus isn't on all that metaphysical stuff, what is the core insight that powers this whole system? Well, it's a huge, radical shift in how we see reality itself. It's about moving from a world of things to a world of relationships. I mean, our default setting is to see the world as a collection of separate, independent objects, right? There's me, there's you, there's the chair, there's the tree. But the core Buddhist insight, called interdependence, it flips this completely on its head. It says nothing, absolutely nothing, exists on its own. A tree isn't just a tree, it's also the sun, the soil, the rain, the sky. The relationships between things are actually more real than the things themselves. The most beautiful metaphor for this is called the jewel net of Indra. Just try to picture this, an infinite net stretching out in all directions, and at every single knot in that net, there's a perfect, sparkling, multifaceted jewel. Now, if you look closely into any one of those jewels, you see the reflections of all the other jewels in the entire net. Every single part contains the whole. That's the vision of interdependence. And this idea of total interdependence leads us to one of the most misunderstood concepts in all of Buddhism, emptiness, or shunyata. Now, this does not mean nothingness, or some big black void. Not at all. It means that nothing exists independently. Things are empty of having a separate, standalone self.
So emptiness isn't a void. It's actually the radical fullness of this interconnection, what the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh called interbeing.
So, okay, that's the big idea. But how do you actually experience this for yourself? How do you make it real? Well, if the mind is the source of the problem, then it has to be the laboratory for the solution, right? And this is where meditation comes in. Not just as a way to chill out, but as a real technology for rigorously training the mind.
Broadly speaking, you can think of it as having two wings. The first is samatha, which is about developing stability, calm, and focus. It's like sharpening a tool or focusing a microscope. And the second wing is vipassana, or insight meditation. That's when you use that sharp, stable mind to see reality with incredible clarity, to directly experience the truth of impermanence and interdependence for yourself.
So what does this actually look like? Let's take a really concrete example. Loving-kindness meditation. It's a systematic way of cultivating a different kind of mind. You start with yourself, generating feelings of goodwill. Then you extend that feeling to a good friend. Easy enough. Then to someone you feel kind of neutral about. Then, and here's the tough part, you extend it to someone you find difficult. Finally, you extend it to every living being. You see what's happening? You're not just thinking nice thoughts. You are actively rewiring your own emotional habits, replacing anger with goodwill.
All right, so after all this diagnosis, this shift in view, this mental training, where are we trying to get to? What's the ultimate goal of this quest? The destination is a state of profound psychological freedom. This state is called nibbana. And let's be really clear, framed psychologically, this is not some heavenly place you go to after you die. It's a state of mind you can achieve right here, right now. It's what your mind is like when it's been cleansed of the three poisons that distort our perception and cause all our suffering: greed, hatred, and delusion.
But here's the thing. This kind of inner transformation, it can't just stay bottled up inside of you. It's impossible. Because when you truly, deeply grasp that everything is interconnected, it fundamentally changes how you show up in the world and how you relate to every single person in it. The personal just naturally becomes social.
Think about the social impact through this amazing analogy. On one hand, you have a zoo. A zoo has variety, right? Lots of different animals, but they're all in separate cages. They're just coexisting. But now, think about an ecosystem. An ecosystem has real diversity. The differences between the plants and animals aren't just tolerated, they actively contribute to the health and vitality of the entire system. That's what interdependence shows us, that our real strength is in how our differences work together. And this quote from the wonderful Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh just nails it. In a famous poem, he writes from the perspective of both a young girl who is a victim and the pirate who attacks her. When he says, "Please call me by my true names," he's asking us to recognize our shared existence, our interbeing. When you can see yourself in everyone, the good and the bad, the door of your heart, the door of compassion, just naturally swings open. So we end up right back where we started, with a question. This whole 2,500-year-old science of the mind argues that our experience of reality isn't fixed. It's shaped by our perceptions, our feelings, our intentions. So if that's true, if the world we all live in is actually a reflection of the minds that inhabit it, then what kind of world becomes possible when we start, together, to train those minds for clarity, for wisdom, and for compassion?